for Life and Money Matters with the Success Guys, Mike Hill and Renee Guerra. Changing lives one day and $1 at a time.
Good afternoon, KBEC listeners. We've got Mike and Renee in studio today. How are you guys doing?
Doing very well, as my grandfather would say. Having a great morning on St. Patrick's Day.
Oh. You know, we did that this morning at 7:30 when we were doing the flea market, and I flunked.
Oh,
I cannot do an Irish accent. The lights lit up, and everybody said, oh, my gosh, forget it.
He didn't sound that great on the Irish accent. He gave it a college try there and go. But I'm doing fine. My legs are a little tired from cycling the last 3 days. Got about 204 miles out in the hill country, and
okay,
it's been
I love
nice.
how I just throws that in there. 204 miles.
I just kind of did that for a warm-up today. Had nothing else to do.
Exactly.
I don't think I've ridden 204 miles in my life, much less 3 late.
Mike Hill and Renee Guerra in the studio with us today to talk about Life and Money Matters, the two Success Guys, changing lives one day and $1 at a time. Renee, that is kind of disgusting to just throw the 206 out there in a, matter-of-fact way, but we'll let you get away with it today. One of the things I want to do is kind of recap what happened last week, and we had a great show and talked to our listeners about taking control of your finances, really trying to plan ahead and make decisions on your taxes. Last week we talked about a little bit on hiring your kids even, right, Mike? We talked about how to do that in a way to get a tax write-off. And as we get into this section, I want to remind everybody, please give us a call here at 972-923-1390 or 972-938-1390 so we can answer both your financial questions as well as your life skill questions. This is a show that works very well if we get interaction from our listeners, and we're here to literally answer any of your questions as it relates to money or life-changing things that could be going on. With that, Mike, let's talk about taxes a little bit and kind of recap where we came last week in terms of what people should be thinking about right now.
Well, you know what, Jim? I'm going to use a story that I got a call actually from a client this week that was her husband was thinking about retiring. He's 66 years old, and he had the old... the Social Security question. Do I take it now at 66 or 70? And I think this relates to taxes. His question to me was, Mike, I could take, of course, Social Security now, but I plan on working till age 68 or 69. Well, God bless him. He loves what he does, but so he's going to continue working. The reason I bring this up is I told him, then you're better off waiting to take Social Security. Something that people don't know out there is that when you're married, if you make more than $32,000 a year, and that number hasn't changed since 1982, by the way. If you make more than $32,000 a year, 50% of your Social Security check is taxed. And if you make more than $44,000 a year, 85% of your Social Security. Now, not 85% rate. I'm talking if you made $1,000 Social Security, $850 of it's going to be taxed. My point to him was your average right now Social Security check goes up about 8% a year. What I mean by that, the difference between age 66 is that you would get $1,000 at age 67, you would get $1,080. And oh, by the way, you're not paying taxes on that quote-unquote growth of your check. So,
okay, let me understand the math here a little bit, though. I'm ignorant. So I'm making $44,000.
No comment.
I know.
Sorry.
Trust me, I'm very ignorant. I walked right into that one. I'm making $44,000, okay? But let's say my IR or my Social Security check for simple math is $1,000 a month. So I'm making $44,000 plus I'm getting $1,000 benefit. That's taxed at 85%.
No.
So I'm only getting $150 of
No. $850 would be taxed of that $1,000 Social Security check.
Okay.
But it's still taxed. I mean, let's
yeah, but it's not taxed at the 85% rate.
You didn't get a write-off when you put that money in for 60 years or whatever. So yeah, and the other part of that is also at age 70. This is the one that'll really tear you up. At age 70 and a half, if you have an IRA, let's say you worked for a company for 50 years, you rolled over your 401k, you're happy, you got an $800,000 IRA now, for example. Your IRA, when you turn 70 and a half, and a lot of the listeners around here, because I've met with them, I didn't know that till I turned 70. At 70 and a half, the government, IRS, makes you take what they call a mandatory distribution. So now you have an $800,000 IRA, or whatever the amount is. Now you're forced to take $50,000 out. Before, you didn't make any other money. So your Social Security isn't taxed, but now because of that mandatory distribution at 70.5, bam, not only do they tax you on your IRA, now you're getting hit with Social Security taxation because that counts as income. That's why you saw a lot of people a couple of years ago convert to Roth IRAs, not because they wanted to avoid taxes, but Roth IRAs, you do not have to take the mandatory distribution at age 70.5.
Well, and I'll tell you a real life story about a hypothetical individual who we won't go into names here. But if you happen to be the recipient out there of a death benefit as well from that traditional IRA, when you receive that money, you also then have to take that same level of distribution, even if you're under the age of 59.5, even if you're not at the typical age where you think about taking out IRA withdrawals, and then you're taxed as an individual, not as at the level of the death benefit of the individual who unfortunately passed away, but on your own tax rate. So all of a sudden, whether you want it or not, you know, your Vanguard, your Fidelity, your whoever your money is with calls you up and says, by the way, we need you to pull out $17,200 this year. And you're going, I don't really need the money. I don't really want the money. And they're going, well, you have to take it because by law, and I didn't fully understand this, but they do the multiplier and they say, okay, if this has got X amount of money in it, by the time the death benefit or that person who unfortunately passed away, if they were to reach matured or
age 95,
92 or 87 or whatever that magic number is, they want the value of that IRA to be zero at that point in time. So then that's how they come up with all this fancy multiplier.
I'll do you one better.
To our listeners, if you've got those kind of questions out there, please give us a call at 972-923-1390 or 972-938-1390, because we'd like to be able to provide you some guidance on those kind of things. And it's a very, very important topic when you get into how to really plan for retirement, where your money and your assets are sitting, and knowing the difference between what you can do with a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA or any other kind of program. So.
Well, get ready when estate taxes start coming back into the fold. You know, that was pretty much done away with the Bush tax cuts, but now they're going back into effect in 2013. Your IRA, let's say you have a huge IRA balance of $1 million, and everything else adds up to 1.5. And I know what some people may think, and who are these people with $1 million? I get that, but when you live long enough and you combine assets, et cetera, you have an IRA that's worth $1 million, okay? Let's say the estate tax exclusion is $1 million. And all your other assets add up to about $500,000. So now you have $1.5 million total that the kids, for lack of a better word, inherit. You with me?
And that includes the house. That includes all assets.
So now your kids are hit with estate taxes on that $500,000, that number that's above that $1 million exclusion. The IRA balance counts against estate taxes as well. So there's some people, if you have a $2 or $3 million IRA because you had a huge 401k and you rolled over, you not only get hit with estate taxes, then when the kids start taking it out, they get hit with taxes on it because it's an IRA. That's another reason that a lot of people did Roth IRAs, because it still counts against estate taxes, but you don't get taxed when you start taking a distribution out, when you inherit it or when your wife inherits it, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, this is worth a phone call, or this is worth a question. But this is worth a question to me.
People don't realize that.
How do you take, I guess, how do you determine the whole structure of when you should make the move from that traditional IRA over to a Roth IRA? And I'm not trying to throw you a curveball here, because this isn't something you and I even talked about prior.
No, you're absolutely, you know, and there's limits on that. This year, they extended the limits, and what I mean by that, income limits. If you make too much money, they wouldn't even let you convert to a Roth IRA a couple of years ago. 2 years ago, I did a lot of Roth IRA conversions, because when you convert, Jim, you have to pay the taxes all up front.
Yeah, you get the penalty
you get
on the traditional IRA.
But if you live 25 years, how much is tax-free growth and not having to take it out at 70.5, or not having your kids or even grandkids take that money out with taxes on it worth to you? But there were years where you couldn't even convert it if you made more than $160,000 a year, for example. Now that income limit is taken away for 2012 as well. Now you still have to pay all the taxes up front when you convert. But I have people, there's no rule that says you have to do all of it. Do half now. And then guess what? January 1st, 2013, if it is extended again, do the other half. Now you're putting off the taxes till April 15th, 2014.
Sure.
And this is something people don't understand. It's the value of the IRA when you convert, not to become too preachy. So let's say that IRA is $100,000. let's say 12 months from then, the market crashes, whatever, even though you shouldn't be all in the market, but the market crashes and the account value goes down to $80,000, Jim. Then you could do what they call, not to get too technical, a recharacterization where it's like a do-over. Remember we played kickball in our yard and we kicked the ball in a tree? Do-over. You can reconvert it back to regular and do it again on the $80,000 value, not the $100,000 value, so therefore you pay less taxes on the conversion. Anyway, I don't want to get too convoluted, but those are things that I've taught in the classes, and I definitely want the listeners to discuss with their CPAs or even call in, and we can tell you little ways on how to do it.
Mike, throw out a phone number, too, to our guests there. If they've got a very technical question like that or a very specific one to you during the course of the week, how would they get in contact with you to have a consultation with you to answer that kind of question?
We have 3 girls standing by, but our number is 800-333-3030. Again, that's 800-333-3030, and that gets either one of our offices, either here or in Plano, Midlothian or the Plano offices. But no, I'd be more than happy to answer questions. Just mention that you heard it on KBEC, so I know that you're a listener. So I can tell Jim that actually somebody besides my wife and my mother, et cetera,
are out there listening to us and trying to figure out what's going on. No, I appreciate that. At the same token, I know that there's a lot of people, and we've had this conversation before, that when it gets into financial matters, they're concerned about divulging over the airwaves how much money they have or how much money they're looking to invest. But at the end of the day, you need to get advice, folks out there. I can't say this enough because there's so many variables. And you taught me something this afternoon. I never knew you got the do-over. I always thought that it was always at the value right when you said, okay, I'm going to make the switch.
A lot of people don't want to do it because it's a lot more paperwork and et cetera, but we did about 10 of them in 2009, 2010 because it saved clients close to 10, 15% in taxes.
So is that, I've got a question real quick, sure. Mike. Is that pretty common? Because, that's the first thing I've heard of it, too. So just I'm trying to write all these notes down and listen. I'm trying to write everything down here. I'm really learning, but is that pretty common?
Yeah, well, hopefully it's not too common because that means your account value went down a bunch. What I actually did with some people, here's just a concept. This is just little old Mike Hill's concept, so forgive me. I didn't patent this or anything, so anybody can use it. Is what I have done is when I had people that I know that wanted to convert, I did 2 IRA accounts. Now, with that, you got to pay the little $30 IRA custodian fee that pretty much all of them have out there. But you have 2 IRA accounts. One would be mostly your stocks or your things like Apple that move all over the place. And then the other IRA account, we put only our fixed stuff that we know is not going to go down. It's not going to go up 20%, but it's fixed. That's the one we convert both of them. That way, when the fixed one is growing, we keep it. We don't have to recharacterize. Now the other one's the only one that we got to recharacterize back. We kind of already know what our taxes are going to be. That way, it's a good way of splitting up, and you kind of let all the riskier investments in that one IRA. And hey, if it goes up, great. That's what we wanted it to do. If it goes down, now we don't have to recharacterize the whole thing. We still got one account that's growing tax-free.
Does that naturally give you a little bit more divestiture too?
Yeah,
I would assume, and looking at different asset classes and that kind of stuff.
And it sounds funny, but it also makes it, if you know that going in, you're not too upset. Now, of course, nobody wants to lose anything, but you're not so upset when your $100,000 is now $95,000. You're like, dadgummit, I hate it, but at least now I'm paying taxes on $5,000 less than what I would have done in January. Again, the whole purpose may not be for everybody. But I also talk about partial. You don't have to do the whole amount. Convert 50,000 out of 100,000. You don't have to do the whole thing. So tax-free and not having to do those mandatory distributions is huge because I don't know about you guys. I happen to think when you have $15 trillion in debt as a country, we're actually going to have higher taxes eventually. I don't think we're going to have lower taxes going forward. So.
Well, it's funny you should mention that because I was having that conversation this week with a banker friend of mine and actually a person at a credit union, and people don't realize that we are at an all-time low when it comes to the cost of borrowing money. You cannot borrow money any cheaper than right now in the history of the United States. The flip side to that is it's not going to go on forever. And, we were talking about ARMS. We were talking about what do you do for financing your home? Do you go long-term? Do you go short-term? Whatever. And to that end, money's cheap today, but it's not going to be cheap forever. And when you start looking at inflation and those kind of things, you better be prepared here to manage a very difficult and rocky ocean, as we say.
And that's what kind of kills me, and this is the only thing that I would disagree. And I'm sorry, Renee, I don't mean to take up all, but it's just you hit hot buttons.
Like I said,
you hit hot buttons because I get these questions all the time from clients. Is you think taxes are going to? I think interest rates definitely they're going to. I mean, come on, like you said, we're at all-time lows. You can't go in. I mean, what are you going to do? Go to the bank and pay them to hold your money? I mean, that's basically what's next. You know, it's not a CD anymore. It's hey, I'll hold your money for you for a fee. But my point is that I do think I disagree with Warren Buffett. He still has not invested in anything into gold or silver or any kind of commodities. And I don't want to go on here and preach that's what you need to have, that's what you don't need to have. But guys, I think the government, which is smart, is going to do everything they can to keep the U.S. dollar weak, okay? Because all of our bonds, all of our treasuries, everything that we've loaned to China and all these other countries are in dollars. So when you owe somebody money back, does it behoove you to make the dollar that you have to pay them back in weaker or stronger?
Oh, weaker, obviously.
Absolutely weaker. So people that don't, the reason that, I'm not saying gold is, I'm not going to, but if you think our currency is going to get stronger anytime soon, inflation or not, you're crazy because it behooves our government to keep that dollar as weak as it can for as long as it can because they owe so much of it to everybody.
Sure. Hey, listeners, if you're out there and you're driving around or you're thinking of a question, please give us a call at 972-923-1390 or 972-938-1390. We'd be more than happy to help you manage these rocky and crazy times when it comes to managing your money. Since you took up the first 20 minutes, Mike, we're going to just keep you going. And for our listeners out there, Mike's going to probably have to leave a little bit early. He's got a commitment today to a certain soccer team, the Lady Aggies. So he'll be leaving the studio here about 2:30, and we'll kick him off the air. Then we'll get into Renee's segment of the show. But one of the things I want to get into here, and this is a question for both of you, and it's the whole what-if question. And I have to laugh. I have to laugh because I always think of Snoopy when I see the word "if" now because of the whole MetLife deal. How do we get over the what-if question? What do you mean when the what-ifs in your financial life come out and kind of throw you the curveball? How do you get through all of those? Mike?
Okay, well, the what-ifs in the financial, for example, this is the biggest what-if that I have for people because my clientele, normally I deal with people that are 55 and older, 50 and older, that are maybe 5 to 10 years away from retirement. Maybe they don't ever want to retire. The biggest fear that I have for our parents included in this room would be, are you going to outlive your money? That would be a big fear for me, and that's a big fear for my clients. So what I think that everybody should do is you set up an income retirement plan. You have a retirement plan that will last you to age 100. You have maybe it's a Roth. You convert what they call a personal lifetime pension plan. If you do not have a personal pension, remember pensions, guys? They're kind of the way of the dodo bird now. But,
sure.
But there are ways to create your own lifetime kind of pension plan, is what I call it. You also need to think about especially if you're.
Do those come with a guaranteed return?
Absolutely.
Oh, wow.
And you could ladder the maturities. You could also have things that kick in where if rates start going up, the actual return goes up with it. Now, what you give up is liquidity when you go into these kind of products. But who cares? If you tell my mother you're going to get this check for the rest of your life, no matter if you live to 75 or you live to 105, you're still going to be able to go camping with the grandkids. She's happy.
Sure.
It's not for everybody, but it's absolutely a way to not outlive your money.
But it's a way to basically get a guaranteed monthly check at X amount of money.
MetLife had a real good, when you speak about MetLife, that was crazy that you put that in there. MetLife had a good personal pension plan that they had that, for example, that paid 6% for life. Now, again, I'm not on here on the air giving advice to everybody and preaching one over another. I'm independent, so I have to know about all the different ones out there.
Right.
But that would be one, for example. I also like to create my own in our office and not necessarily use an insurance company. But that would be one thing. Protect yourself from the what if. What if I run out of money during retirement? Let's knock that right off the table.
By the establishment of a personal pension plan.
Absolutely.
Gotcha. What about annuities?
Annuities, you can do what they call, I like the split annuity concept. And that's the one that Scott Burns is always talking about in the Dallas Morning News, not the Daily Light. I want to give a plug to them.
No.
But anyway.
Hey, I'm a potato couch investor. I like Scott Burns.
So
Scott
the
makes sense.
Model and all that.
Right.
Which I do agree with a lot of what he said. The split annuity concept allows you to get an income close to 5 to 5.5% for life. That's 90% of it's exempt from taxes. So let's say you have the Social Security issue that we were talking about before. If you do a split annuity, and if you are not familiar with what a split annuity concept is, call us, email us. I will tell you, or we will try to get somebody in contact with you that can at least send you some information on it, or ask your guy that you're working with now. If they don't know what a split annuity is, make sure they know.
Gotcha. Hey, Mike, before you get out of here, too, I know you're leaving in about 2 minutes, but you've got something really special for our listeners, and you've got a program that's coming up here this week, the 22nd through the 29th. And why don't you tell everybody about unlocking Social Security and what you're having to offer here?
I appreciate it, Jim and Renee. Thank you so much. Again, I'm going to coach my daughter's soccer team, so always the coach on weekends. But we've had a great response. We've probably only got 9 or 10 seats left. This Thursday and also March 29th, March 22nd and March 29th, the Midlothian campus of Navarra College is allowing us to do a workshop called Unlocking Social Security. We're going to talk about when you should take it. We're going to do our little calculations in the class at what age, based on your income, is the best age to take it. When you should count on benefits and why you should start planning, understanding how to begin benefits at the right time, avoid damaging Medicare mistakes. That's the biggest thing that I see with my retired clients, all the mistakes they make with Medicare. But that's March 22nd or March 29th, 6:30 to 7:30. That's on Thursdays. The number to reserve your spots, the same one to ask questions to me directly, is 800-333-3030. 800-333-3030 to come to the Social Security workshop.
Hey, Mike, that's fantastic. And thank you for offering that to the KBEC listeners. If you're a KBEC listener out there...
Free, by the way. I didn't mention that. Sorry.
It is free. If you want to attend that, though, walk up to Mike and say, hey, you heard this on KBEC, and tell him that you appreciate his show and everything that we're doing out here. We're going to take a little break and be right back with Renee on the second segment. Thanks. Have a great day, guys. We're back here for the second half of Life and Money Matters with the Success Guys. We got rid of Mike, Renee, so it's just you and I, buddy. It's time for us to have some real fun.
I'm telling you, so sad to see him leave because, all that information he was telling me, he's just very powerful stuff.
Oh, no doubt about it. And he's so passionate about it, and I sit there and I go, I just want to absorb it like a sponge sometimes.
I do, too. He's highlighted so many things that I'm just not aware of, so I'm hoping the listeners will actually, call in to the number that he gave earlier and also go to his seminar that he has coming up, those 2 seminars. I mean, what a privilege to be able to work with Mike and get some of that knowledge from him. It really is. He truly is an expert in his field.
All right, so tell me about the bike ride. I want to hear the ins and outs, and how does a life coach go down to the beauties of Green, Texas, and the hill country, and just truck out 206 miles like it's no big deal.
Well, we talked about goals, right? We've mentioned that on the radio quite a few times, and so this was a personal goal that I had to go down to the hill country, and it's a bike ride that they put on. It's a 7-day bike ride, and you have an opportunity to ride 100 miles a day, but unfortunately I wasn't able to get down there till about Tuesday, but great ride, and the first day you can do a ride called the Lakey Death Ride, and it's 107 miles of just pure climbing pretty much all day long. And, it goes back to goals. This is something I set in 2011 and what I wanted to do in 2012. So I ended up hooking up with a group of guys from Iowa, and they were training, doing this ride to train while they're all triathletes. And, it was interesting because what I ended up finding out from these guys is that these young guys were about in their mid-20s. And one guy was 51 years old. He was training for his first Ironman. You know what an Ironman is, right?
Oh, yeah. That's the 3 disciplines where you got to swim, you got to bike, and then you got to run a marathon after you've done all that.
Yeah. 51 years old. I think it was his first one, 112-mile bike ride, 50 and a 26.5-mile run, and then he has 2-mile swim. Okay. So anyway, I'm riding with these guys, and this one gentleman, we were talking, and he said, I said, so what are you guys out here doing? He says, we're out here just training, and all my buddies are back home in Iowa, and they're partying and having a good time, drinking beer, going to Corpus, wherever they're going to go for the party. And we started talking a little bit, and he says, I'm out here training. I said, well, what for? And he says, well, I'm going to be a Navy SEAL. I was like, really? And I said, so how did you get involved in that? And he said, I've always wanted to be a Navy SEAL since I was a kid. And he goes, but, all my friends are back home partying, and I'm out here having to train. I felt like it's so important. I said, so why is it so important to you? And he says, well, it's something I've been wanting to do all my life. And he talked about how when he's going to be shipped out in May, he impressed me because once he goes through the training, he's going to be a captain.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so you know how hard Navy SEAL training is. I mean, it goes through really intense training. So I was very intrigued with this young guy, and so we kept talking the rest of the route. And one of the things he was telling me is that he has a couple of friends of his that had gone through the Navy SEAL training. And one of his friends was in a group of 107, and only 12 made it.
Oh, my gosh.
Only 12 people made it out of that one class.
Talk about setting a goal and having a tough bar to get over.
Well, you know, I was just thinking, you know, when you set a goal and if it's that difficult, yeah, I was really just impressed with this young man because he was taking that extra mile to continue training while he was during spring break.
Sure.
So his determination and achieving that goal is huge. And so he was telling me a little bit about the training that he's going through. He's giving me a little bit more in-depth knowledge of all the training. Because I saw an episode on TV a while back, last year in Osama, the situation when the Navy SEALs went in. They had a special on TV about how they were trained and so forth. But he gave me a little bit deeper level of the things that they do, and based on what his two friends. With
that level of failure rate, though, I mean, 7 guys make it out of 112. What do you do if you're on the other side of that equation? What if you're never able to achieve your goal? You know, what if you're always the guy that kind of falls short? What do you do to overcome that?
Well, you know, you have to reassess where you're at, you know, and how much do you really want that goal? I'm sure all 112 guys, or how many, I think it's 107 or so, if they had the desire to make it, you know, it could have been exhaustion, fatigue, and so forth, just like this young man. He's out there training, taking his week off of training. Who knows what those other guys did? But, you know, if you don't make it, you have to reevaluate about how much you really want it. What are the factors that went into that?
Bouncing back from that reevaluation, I think, is kind of critical, too. I can tell, again, a personal sidebar here. You know, as a 5'9" white kid coming out of Indiana, I wanted to be an NBA basketball player, but there was a reality that I was never going to, one, be able to slam dunk, two, just probably didn't have the physical makeup to make it in the NBA. But I told my kids growing up that the goal is important, and staying focused on the goal and trying to do everything in your power to achieve it is important. But there will come a time. You know,
sure.
We all can't be at the top of the pyramid. You know, we all can't be the best neurosurgeon or the best physician or financial planner or whatever it may be in life. You have to understand the limitations and then accept those.
Well, yeah, I like that because, you know, you're not quite that tall to be an NBA player.
A 5'9" white guy who couldn't jump and I could dribble, and that was about it. So.
But there are some men out there, men and women, that are short.
Yeah.
And they just had the skill level to make it.
The Spud Webbs, sure.
Yeah, Spud Webbs. And so when you saw that guy out there playing, it was incredible. So he had that heart, and he had that passion, he had that drive, he had the perseverance. You know, maybe a lot of people were telling him no, and that's the huge drive. Now, this young man that I was bike riding with, he said there was a guy that he ended up hearing about that went into the training, and he passed the physical test. This guy said the physical test was pretty easy to get in through, but he failed after 3 days. He was in the Navy SEAL training, and it was about 3 or 4 days he had to quit.
On the physical side?
On the physical side.
Wow.
Couldn't handle it. So, and, you know, they do 5 days. He was telling me they could do 5 days of 1 hour sleep of the night. That's all they get. So I was asking him, I said, so how do you plan to get by with that? He goes, you know, I've got the determination. He was kind of pointing at his head. He goes, it's all about mind. He goes, nobody's going to tell me I can't do it. He says, I've got the drive. I know I'm going to make it. And he goes, I know that when I'm there, they're going to even be harder on me because I'm going in as an officer training. So when he comes out, he's going to be a captain. So he's pretty well prepared, or he seemed to be pretty well prepared. And I was just impressed with the whole group as we were riding. We ended up with 107 miles that day. And I've got to tell you, these guys from Iowa, they had never seen any hills like we did out in the hill country. But you know, the 51-year-old guy, I'm 48, the 51-year-old guy and this other guy, I think he was about 21, they both beat me up to climbs, quite a few climbs. But it was the sheer determination of the whole bunch because they had never climbed anything like this. They were just looking at the hills and like, oh my gosh. I was like, you guys are going to make it.
Right.
And they made it. You know, it was just all mind over matter. And I was just really impressed with that because they said, we have never, ever been in hills like this.
Yeah, the hills of Iowa tend to be a cornfield left and a cornfield right. And that's
exactly.
About it. Fascinating. You know, goal setting, you and I have talked about this on numerous occasions, and I think it's you know, paramount for people to be able to set their goals and really understand what it means to create a long-term goal, what it means to create a short-term goal. How do you mesh them? How do you sit down and say, okay, I need to always think about where I'm going to ultimately end up, but short-term, you've got to have some intermediate steps in there, don't you, just to kind of feel like you're moving?
You do, and I kind of, for me, what works for me, and when I do have short-term goals or long-term goal, you know, the action steps may be a little bit different. There's smaller. You have to take action for one, but the goal for short-term goals may be something I want to do in the year. So let's say I'm in Toastmasters. Mm-hmm. So my short-term goal is to be an advanced communicator bronze by the end of December 31st, 2012.
What do you have to do that?
There's 10 speeches that have to be involved in that, and you have to, of course, you have to memorize your speeches, but they give you different guidelines in each speech. They're not all the same. You have maybe one will be vocal variety. You may have to do a storytelling. You may have to do one on reading out of a book and giving out information and making it interesting to the audience. So each presentation or each speech that you give is also evaluated. So that gives you an idea of where you're at in your speaking skills and your level. So my short-term goal, to go back, is I want to be able to get my advanced communicator bronze this year. My long-term goal, if I wanted to be a distinguished Toastmaster, which is even more involved, is where I have to be an area governor, have to be over president of the club, have to take all these different leadership roles in the organization. That might be something that's going to take about 2 to 3 years in time. So that could be my long-term goal. So I'm still working. You can see my short-term goal will affect my long-term goal.
Sure.
So that's how that would work out. So you're still taking steps to get to that.
You know, one of the things I think it's so important, and so many times when people set goals, they don't set them to a level that, one, it's obtainable from a time standpoint.
True.
Or it is measurable. You know, and I've told everybody that I've ever talked to about a goal, the number one thing is to be able to come back and say, did you make it, yes or no? And I think that we've talked about fear so many times on the station. Our listeners out there probably don't ever want to hear the word again, but if you don't set a measurable goal, then there's no way to come back and say, hey, did I achieve it or didn't I achieve it? So you set a very measurable one. You want to be at a bronze level, you've got to give 10 speeches, and you've got to have it completed within 1 year. So each one of those measuring criteria pretty much lays out the plan for you then in terms of what you got to do tactically to be able to achieve it.
Absolutely, and that's what I encourage the listeners to do. When you have a goal, and you can chunk it down. It doesn't have to be huge. And if it is huge, then chunk it down, just like we said, a short-term goal, long-term goal. And then just keep your eye on the prize. And don't give up. Perseverance is so big. I mean, it's just a huge thing that keeps people moving.
I'm going to totally change subjects on you, and you're not prepared for this one. And it's not a big curveball. It's kind of a softball curveball. But we've got a very special guest next week. And I want to emphasize this probably 2 or 3 times here in our last segment. We have one of the leading people in the whole field of life skill management that is going to call in next week, listeners, and you need to make sure that you take advantage of this, because this gentleman's one of those people that just to talk to him, it's going to cost you $2,000 probably to walk in the room. That's no exaggeration, I don't think, is it?
No, it's probably even more than that. I think the guy commands about $35,000 just for a keynote speech.
Wow.
So
the gentleman's name is Jack Canfield, and why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about Jack and some of his background in life?
You know, Jack, he is the co-creator of the Chicken Soup for the Soul series, you know, one of the number one books that he published several years ago, and then he has...
And I didn't realize how many books, I mean, he's done Chicken Soul for the Soup for country music fans, for moms, for dads who have green hair. I mean, there's like 40 books beyond that.
There's a ton of them. There's a lot of Chicken Soup for the Soul series, and I'm glad you reminded me of that. There's... You know, they started coming out of the woodwork because of just all the how successful they were and how much help they were to all the individuals that were reading them. I mean, it's incredible. So, you know, Jack's been in the industry for over 40 years, and he's been studying the self-help industry and one of the things that he likes to see is people to use their unique talents and gifts to share them with the world. And Jack has an idea that we can all create anything we want in our lives, and you have to put your mind to it. And so he has these success tools, success principles that he has written over the last 40 years. And, you know, when I first encountered Jack in 2010, which was a seminar here in Dallas, he just so took me away with all the information that he did within a day class. It's just incredible. And he really just gives you the tools and the mindset of how you can be successful in life, or how you want to be more successful in life. Take you from where you're at, where you are now in your life, to take you where you want to be in your life. And the steps doesn't have to be that hard. He talks about being successful with ease. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be never going to be difficult, but you can be successful a little easier just by having the steps, by putting in successful habits, by taking feedback. So, you know, we've talked about a little of these things on the radio, but there's whole different criteria that he gives you. But
next Saturday, he will be doing a call-in show for KBEC listeners. He'll be on air with us between 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock.
2 and 3.
And the only thing he has asked is that if you have a question about life skills and about managing your life, he would like to have those ahead of time so he can do a little bit of research and provide you with a quality answer. So please, please, please get us a question at info@kbec.com. Email that to me, and I'll make sure that Renee gets it, or you can also email directly to Renee. And why don't you give him out your email, Renee?
It's Renee at rtgcoaching.com. Renee at rtgcoaching.com. And we'd love to have some listeners give us some questions so we can get to Jack, so I can give that information to him, and I'll email that to him directly next week. I'm just excited to have him on the air. I mean, this is just an incredible opportunity for the Ellis County and KBEC listeners to have Jack, the #1 success coach, on the radio for next Saturday. I mean, it's just really going to be phenomenal to have him on our air with us.
Between now and then, if you want to take a brief tour of some of the books that he's written or find out more about him, he also has a web page. That's Jack Canfield, CANFIELD.com. And it's amazing. Just go spend 5 minutes there, and I found that whole chicken soup series. And I knew about the one book, and I had actually read the first one, but I had no idea there's 40 to 45 new ones that he's come out with in that whole area. So to that end, let's take a little quick commercial break, come back, and we'll rip up the second half of our segment today. All right, we're back here at beautiful Waxahachie, Texas, 79 degrees. I just jumped to 80 right when I said that. That's a beautiful day, isn't it?
It is awesome outside.
I know, we need
really
to get outside. And spring's come so early this year. I mean, here it is, March 15th. All the trees are coming out. I don't think we'll have another freeze. I think it's pretty much done for winter.
I don't think so either. I had a bird bath that I have to keep those electric heaters in there, and I had it plugged in. So I finally unplugged it because I found out that I'm probably burning a little bit of electricity. Or maybe, I don't even know if it runs unless it gets too cold anyway.
Wow.
It is hot outside. It's a beautiful day, though.
Beautiful day. Get out there and enjoy it. But before you do, let's talk a little bit about life and money matters and how we can hopefully get you onto a better way of living your life. Renee, you got a great story that I'd like you to kind of relay to our listeners, and you and I went over this in kind of pre-production. Why don't you lay that on them?
Well, the question was, what if my goals continue not to come true and after you keep trying? So the thing is that I found very helpful is just to make sure what is it that your relation to your goal, what is it that reevaluate yourself, reevaluate it and to where you're at in your goals. In other words, take a hard look at action of where you've been, take a look at determine what your next steps will be. And this could also involve gathering feedback from your colleagues, your mentor, your business partner, friends, networking groups. The question is that you want to ask them, and this is very important to the listeners, and also has helped me, is how do I see myself limiting myself? How do I see myself limiting myself? So if you're not reaching your goals and you think, okay, I've been trying so hard, what gives? I've done all these things. I've written them down. Renee and Mike, we talked about this. My finances are still in shambles. You can go to ask people that are in confidence, how do you see myself limiting myself?
In other words, I'm looking in the mirror and I can't really answer the question for myself, so help me answer it.
Exactly. And the thing is you don't want to kill the messenger. So when you ask that question, how do you see myself limiting myself, you don't want to kill the messenger if they're giving you some honest feedback. And this really relates to me, and because last week I'm ADD. I have a little ADD, and I have a tendency to travel down the bunny trail. So one evening last week, I was telling Tricia, my wife, I said, I'm going to start reading this book. And I started reading the first page, and I saw this cool quote, and I thought, wow, I looked over at Trish, and I said, I like this quote. I'm going to post it on my business page real quick. And she kind of looks over at me, so I run to get the laptop, and I start messing around. I get on the computer and start looking at all the MSN web links and this and that and the other. And so finally I
So in other words, you got completely off of reading the book.
I got off of reading the book. I didn't even think about it. I mean, I just thought it's going to take about 5 minutes. So I'm sitting here on the couch, and I finally told myself, I said, okay, I got to get back to reading the book, that first page. And so Trish looks over at me, and she says, you know how long you've been on that bunny trail? And I kind of had a grin on my face. I looked over at her, and I said, no, how long have I been on that? And she said, you've been on that bunny trail for 22 minutes.
Oh, my gosh.
So that little John of just taking that and trying to look at that quote and post it on my Facebook was 22 minutes. And, I didn't get mad at her because I just said, what? That was a long time.
Well, she's the messenger, and all she's trying to tell you is you're getting off task here a little bit.
Well, the thing was, is she said, all I'm doing is giving you some feedback. I'm just giving you some message that you can work with. So, so the thing is that this type of feedback is important to people who want to be successful, and I do, and I want to continue to do that. And I know that with my ADD, it's a little more challenging for me sometimes. I have a strict schedule, but successful people take the feedback and they make adjustments along the way to keep moving forward. So, again, that's a great question to ask, and it's one of the things I learned from Jack as I started moving into my own business and then doing things as far as networking is I would ask my colleagues that question, and sometimes they would look at me and it's like, really, you just open yourself up that wide, huh? Yeah. That kind of feedback. Sure. Why not?
Does Jack Canfield have a list of canned questions that he pretty much uses as the foundation, or is he one of these guys that literally goes into the room and says, okay, let's talk?
I think he has some questions that he uses quite a bit during a training class.
To probe thought?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like this recent train-the-trainer I went through, I'm going through this year, he has some specific questions that he asks the group that are, you're not reinventing the wheel. You're just trying to get people to open up and see their limitations or find out where their strengths are. So if you were to go to the website, I think if you go to jackcanfield.com, and he has a video of himself going through some of the things that would help the listeners.
I find those people so fascinating because their ability to engage you in the thought process and to make you think, whether you can just kind of be oblivious going through life and not even doing anything, but when they ask you that poignant question, suddenly, boom, the light comes on and you're doing the introspection. You're looking at your own life in a whole different venue.
It is a boom, and I think that's the aha moment that he really likes to see when we're in training, and the trainings that I've been through is that when you have about 250 people, that's at the breakthrough to success. That's in August of this year. You see a lot of breakthroughs. You see a lot of people just really kind of you're like, wow, I never knew this is the way I led my life. They just had no idea until you started going through the questions, the Q&As, and then going through some of the homework of the modules that he had through some of the courses that he had at Breakthrough Success, the pages. And then when you're at those training events, you would ask a complete stranger after about the fourth or fifth day, maybe somebody that you work with quite a bit, not so much a stranger, but you would ask the person, how do you see myself limiting myself? And it would give you a good answer. I mean, it would be pretty spot on. It was for me when I went through that. And I'm like, how does this person know me with just 4 days of being in a workshop? And it was pretty accurate, Jim. I mean, it was pretty amazing how some of these people were able to just, because they can tell by your posture, they can tell by the way
demeanor, your look, sure.
Yeah, it's just incredible. So, again, it was just an aha moment there to see how I can help myself.
For those listeners who may just now be tuning in, we have a very special guest with us next Saturday here on KBEC from 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock. Jack Canfield, who is the author and lifestyle coach behind the Chicken Soup for the Soul series. Will be here. live, or not live actually, but on the telephone, taking your questions. So if you have a question for Jack Canfield, please this week jot it down, send us an email at info@kbec.com so we can get that question to Jack and get it answered for you. He is literally one of the top 2 or 3 life coaches in the country, and the opportunity to have him here on KBEC is a real blessing. And to that, I thank you, Renee.
Oh, absolutely.
For absolutely taking the fortitude. Why don't you tell our listeners real quick that story, because I think it's kind of funny how you approached Jack and the whole thought process behind it, and how you were kind of intimidated even a little bit.
I was. It was interesting. And, you know, when we started the radio show here, one of the things that popped in my mind was asking Jack to be on as a guest on the show. And I put that goal on a piece of paper and said, this is what I want to do. And back in February, I was in San Diego at Jack's Train the Trainer course, and we were going through, he had us going through...
What course? Train the Trainer?
Train the Trainer.
Okay, so you were doing a training underneath him.
Train the Trainer underneath Jack, and what that is, for the listeners, is that you have an opportunity to work with Jack and his team of advisors that he brings in. He brings in other guest speakers to help develop us, and also to take his message out and to use it with our own material. And one of the things that he talked about was, just being able to use his material and go forward. But, one thing about Jack is he always wants you to think big. So the question about me being able to ask him that question, we were going through an exercise, and I had a partner, and once we got through the exercise, my partner, I shared with her, I said, well, the reason why, another big goal I have is to ask Jack to be part of the KBC radio, have him on as a guest. As soon as we finish, she raises her hand high in the air, and I'm thinking, oh, I know what she's going to do here. So she looks over at Jack, and Jack says, okay, what do you have? He goes, well, Renee here has a question. She's raising her hand up in the air, and she says, so Jack says, okay, get him a mic. So they bring me a mic, and so I said, Jack, I have a radio show. Mike and I have a radio show called Life and Money Matters, and took him through all that. And I said, my big, hairy, audacious goal is to ask you to be on the station. And you could just hear a pin drop, and people were smiling. They all turned around and looked at me. You ever had that tunnel vision where everybody just... Sure. So I started feeling a little embarrassed, and I don't know why, but before he even had a chance to answer, I said, you don't have to answer now. And he says, I'll do it.
Wow,
so people
right
started,
on the spot.
It was incredible. People were clapping and just smiling, congratulating me, and it really set the tone. That was the first day. That was probably around 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock that morning that we started our training program. And so it really set the tone, and I'm very grateful to my friend Audra Clay, who set that up for me. She said, I couldn't let that go by. And I said, I didn't think you would. And so my idea was actually just to ask him when he was on break, just kind of quietly.
Sure.
But you never know.
The whole deal. Right.
Yeah, but you never know when something shows up. And so for a listener, I mean, that's so important, Jim. When you see something like that,
the opportunity presented itself, and you jumped on it, and look what happened.
You have to jump on it. I mean, you really do. And so that's about taking action. So it was a cool example of just taking action. So I had to do that.
Let me share with you another one. This
Sure.
one is a true story. There was a shareholder meeting at a major corporation in the United States, and this corporation had over 27,000 employees worldwide. This employee shows up, and the CEO of the company, along with the chief financial officer, they've just gone through the annual plan. They've told the shareholders what they're going to return in equity and how much money they're going to make next year, and blah, 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 on and on and on. 3-hour presentation, PowerPoint, huge hotel, the whole bit. CEO says, I'm going to open the floor up to shareholders and stockholders and anybody that has questions. So first couple ones are the big Wall Street guys that, hey, I own X amount of shares or whatever. All of a sudden, the microphone gets handed over to this young lady. She says, I'm 29 years old. I've just bought 100 shares of your stock, and I'm an employee. I need to know if I'm going to get my 7% raise this year, because if I'm going to get that raise, I'd like to buy more shares of stock. Can you tell me if I'm going to get my raise?
Wow.
And the guy turned to her and said, well, I can't tell you specifically because of the hierarchy and the way we do our evaluations or whatever, but he said buying our company would be a very good bet, and I would definitely tell you to reinvest back in it. She immediately did that. This 27-year-old girl was able to retire by the time she was 35. And the guy that answered the question was Steve Jobs.
Wow.
Yeah.
Incredible story.
Incredible. So, again, it's that if you get the chance, and I've had an opportunity to talk to some pretty big people in life, but at the end of the day, they're all human beings.
Exactly.
So that's what counts.
Yeah.
Hey, gang, thank you for spending your Saturday afternoon with us for Life and Success and Life and Money Matters, changing lives one moment and $1 at a time. We appreciate it. We'll be back here next Saturday with a very special guest, Jack Canfield. We thank you for listening and have a great and wonderful day.
Thanks, Jim.
You've been listening to Life and Money Matters with the Success Guys on 1390 KBEC. Mike Hill is a registered representative of and securities offered through Berthel Fisher & Company Financial Services, Inc., member FINRA SIPC. Hill & Associates Wealth Management Advisors is independent of BFCFS. The interpretations and organizations of these ideas are the confidential thoughts of Mike Hill and do not represent the opinions of Berthel Fisher & Company Financial Services.
Classic